we had the surgery. He walked in the recovery room, and I looked at his face.
You know, I think the thing I remember most about Clint Eastwood is that a year or so later,
He was the action hero with a heart. She was the sound and music star who saved a drowning child on camera. Together, Robert Urich and Heather Menzies were Hollywood's most underrated love story, but no one talked about how it ended. The cancer that ripped their world apart, the back-to-back tragedies, the death that happened exactly 15 years later. At the same time, down to the minute, these weren't just coincidences. What really happened to Robert and Heather is almost too cruel to believe. They said Robert Urich had the most TV shows of any leading man in history, 15 different series. That alone would make him a legend, but his story wasn't just about quantity. It was about how he kept surprising people, shifting from action star to dramatic lead, then to a Broadway singer, and even to a respected documentary host. Most actors get boxed in. Robert broke every mold. He started as a football player from Ohio. No fancy connections, just talent, charm, and one important friend, Burt Reynolds. Burt believed in him early on and helped him land his first big shot. That shot came with SWAT in 1975. Robert played Officer Jim Street, a tough but likable cop. The show didn't last long. It was canceled in 1976 for being too violent, but it put his face in millions of homes. Suddenly, he wasn't just a guy with potential. He was a star in the making. Then came Vegadollar. From 1978 to 1981, Robert played Dan Tana, a cool private detective in Las Vegas. It wasn't just a hit. It was a cultural moment. He drove a red 1957 Ford Thunderbird through the neon streets, solving crimes with smirk and a suit. That car, by the way, replaced a yellow Corvette that burned in the pilot. That red T-Bird became iconic. Just like Robert, the role earned him 2 Golden Globe nominations. More importantly, it made him a symbol, slick, smart, and smooth. For a while, he was the face of primetime drama. But Urich didn't stop there. Over the next 3 decades, he dominated television in a way few others ever have. 15 leading roles, every genre. He did comedy in Soap, where he played a clueless tennis pro. He tackled espionage in Gavilan. He even led a Western, The Lazarus Man, in the mid-90s. From 1973 to 2001, he was on screen almost nonstop, and he wasn't just coasting. He kept taking risks, switching gears, trying new things. He wasn't content being a one-note star. He wanted to do it all. Then came Spencer, For Hire. This wasn't just another detective show. It ran from 1985 to 1988 and brought in an estimated $50 million to the state of Massachusetts. That's how much it cost to shoot on location in Boston, which gave the show its gritty, authentic feel. The winters were brutal. The budgets were tight, but Robert made it work. His chemistry with co-star Avery Brooks, who played the tough and mysterious Hawk, was electric. The show wasn't about car chases and gunfights. It was about character, about justice, about doing the right thing even when it hurt, and fans loved it. He later returned as Spencer in 4 made-for-TV movies, proving the character and Robert had staying power. But just when people thought they had him figured out, he did something no one expected. He became the face of National Geographic Explorer. From 1988 to 1995, he hosted the show as it bounced between TBS, CNBC, and MSNBC. His voice became the sound of wonder, explaining deep-sea mysteries and ancient civilizations. He wasn't just reading a script, he meant it. That's why he won a Cable Ace Award in 1993 and an Emmy in 1992 for narrating U-Boat's terror on our shores. He also hosted On Assignment and won another Cable Ace for that. These weren't throwaway gigs. These were serious, respected shows, and Robert proved he had the range. He could have stopped there and still gone down as a legend, but there was one more act. In 2000, while battling synovial cell sarcoma, a rare and aggressive cancer he'd been fighting since 1996, Robert made his Broadway debut. He played Billy Flynn in Chicago from January 5th to February 13th. He had already done the role on tour in cities like Detroit and Washington, D.C., but this was the big stage. This was the Schubert Theater, and he nailed it. Audiences were shocked. not just by his performance, but by the fact that he could sing, really sing. And there was something else. As his wife later said, there was a twinkle in his eye when he walked out on stage. Even with chemo and exhaustion, he lit up the room. Heather Menzies was born in Toronto on December 3rd, 1949 to Scottish parents who had fled the wreckage of post-World War II Britain. Her father was a struggling artist chasing a fresh start. But what they found in Canada was hardship. They were broke, displaced, and clinging to hope. This difficult immigrant life gave Heather something Hollywood couldn't teach: grit. By the time she turned 14, Heather had already lived in 4 cities across 2 countries: Vancouver, Miami, London, and Southern California. Every time her father's art career failed, the family packed up and moved again. Heather had to learn new accents, new school systems, and how to make friends quickly. It was exhausting, but all that instability made her adaptable. She was already used to reinventing herself, something that would come in handy later. Then, at just 14 years old, without any acting experience, Heather walked into a casting call that would change her life. Hundreds of girls auditioned for The Sound of Music. Most had resumes, agents, and years of training. Heather had nothing but one forgotten TV episode on her record. But she had something else. She was real. Her natural charm stood out. And just like that, she was cast as Louisa Von Trapp. The shoot wasn't just glamorous, singing in the Alps. One terrifying moment nearly turned the film into tragedy. During the rowboat scene, the boat capsized. Heather's 5-year-old co-star, Kim Carruth, who played Little Gretel, couldn't swim. She went under twice. The cameras were rolling. Julie Andrews fell the wrong way. Crew members froze, but Heather didn't. She swam straight to Kim, pulled her up, and saved her life. Kim swallowed so much water, she got sick, and later developed a lifelong fear of swimming. But the scene stayed in the movie, and what you see on screen is real. Heather rescuing her castmate. When The Sound of Music hit cinemas on March 2nd, 1965, it exploded. It won 5 Oscars and became the highest-grossing film of all time by 1966. It made $286 million worldwide and sold 283 million tickets. It topped box offices in 29 countries. And just like that, Heather Menzies, formerly the quiet girl from an immigrant family, was famous everywhere. She was only 15. But Heather didn't want to be frozen in time as sweet little Louisa. So, in 1973, she did something drastic. She posed nude for Playboy in a spread titled Tender Trap. The name was a cheeky nod to her Sound of Music past, but the message was clear. She wasn't a child anymore. It shocked the public. Just 8 years earlier, she had been the innocent teenager in a family film. Now, she was taking control of her image, even if it meant upsetting fans who still saw her as Louisa. That same year, she starred in one of the strangest horror films of the decade. She played Christina, the daughter of a mad scientist turning people into snakes. It was weird, low budget, and full of real snakes. But Heather didn't flinch. Critics called her sweet and appealing. Even in such a bizarre role, she was trying to break out, not fade away. In 1977, she landed a major TV role in Logan's Run, playing Jessica Six in a sci-fi world where people were hunted down at 30. The show was short-lived, just 14 episodes, but Heather's revealing costume and rebellious character made her a standout. At one point, CBS execs panicked, saying she looked too risque for a children's show. Her outfit had to be redesigned with tights and pink briefs. But Heather stayed firm. This was who she was now. In 1978, she made her most successful career move yet, starring in Piranha, a cult horror hit produced by B-movie legend Roger Corman. The budget was just over $700,000, but the film made $16 million. Even Steven Spielberg gave it praise, and a lawsuit from Universal was quietly dropped. Heather played Maggie McEwen, a gutsy skip tracer who drove the action. She held her own alongside a cast of horror regulars, and her performance helped make Piranha a classic. Robert Urich and Heather Menzies met while pretending to be married in a canned hash commercial. Sounds silly, right? But that moment on set in 1974 changed both their lives forever. Heather Menzies was 25, freshly divorced, and trying to move past a young marriage that didn't work out. Robert Urich was 28, fit, charming, and just catching fire in Hollywood. They were filming a simple Libby's commercial playing a married couple, and something just clicked. It wasn't just acting. The connection felt real. So real that even when the camera stopped rolling, the feeling didn't. That one day, pretend to be in love quickly turned into something much deeper. It wasn't just a job. It was the start of a love story that would last for 27 years. Robert wasn't some struggling actor either. He was right on the edge of stardom. Just a year later, in 1975, SW8 hit television screens across America and turned him into a household name. He played Officer Jim Street, the tough guy with heart, and fans loved him. But it didn't happen by accident. Robert had worked hard to transform his image, bulking up from 180 to 220 pounds of solid muscle just to fit the action hero mold. He had the look, the charisma, and the right friends. One of them, Burt Reynolds, even helped get him his big break. Reynolds convinced producer Aaron Spelling to give Robert a shot. One audition later, Spelling was sold. Just like that, Robert Urich was on his way. Heather, meanwhile, was going through her own turning point. She'd been famous once, really famous. At just 15 years old, she played Louisa Von Trapp in The Sound of Music, one of the most iconic films of all time. But child stardom doesn't last forever. By the time she met Robert, she was trying to make the tough leap from child star to serious actress. She was also healing from a 4-year marriage that began when she was only 20. And Robert, he'd also been married once before to a college sweetheart named Barbara Rucker. That marriage ended quietly, but it left him cautious. That's why it was so surprising, maybe even reckless, when just over a year after meeting Heather, he married her. They tied the knot on November 21st, 1975. Fast? Absolutely. But everyone who knew them said the same thing. It felt right. Robert told his friends he knew Heather was the one just weeks after meeting her. And it wasn't Hollywood talk. It was real. Their romance burned fast, but it wasn't a fling. It was the kind of connection that doesn't come along often, especially in show business. Together, they became something rare, a genuine Hollywood power couple with no need for drama. Heather had her film legacy. Robert was becoming TV royalty. By 1978, he landed the lead role in Vega, a stylish crime drama that ran for 3 years and earned him 2 Golden Globe nominations. That's when they really became household names, not just separately, but together. Photographers loved them. Magazine covers followed, but it wasn't just because they looked good together. It was the way they looked at each other. They weren't selling a brand. They were just in love. And Robert wasn't shy about showing it. From the beginning, he went out of his way to bring Heather into his world. She appeared in 3 episodes of Vega. Later, he got her a part in Spencer for Hire. But it wasn't just about giving her roles. It was about sharing his life. His success was their success. And when Heather decided to slow down her acting career to focus on family, Robert backed her completely. That kind of support was almost unheard of in an industry where ego usually wins. In 1975, just after getting married, Heather found out she was pregnant. She and Robert weren't even trying, and the news filled them with joy. "We were over the moon," Heather later said. But their excitement didn't last. She lost the baby. The heartbreak was overwhelming. And it didn't stop there. Heather miscarried again and then again. 3 pregnancies, 3 losses, one after the other. Each one tore at them a little more. What began as hope quickly turned into a pattern of grief. Friends began to worry the couple might not survive the emotional toll. And all of this was happening at the same time. Both of their careers were taking off. They were living under the lights of Hollywood. But behind the scenes, their world was falling apart. After the 3rd miscarriage, something had to change. Robert and Heather made a difficult decision. Adoption. It wasn't a quick fix. They were placed on a waiting list and had to go through a long process. But eventually they welcomed their first child, Ryan, in 1978. Then came Emily in 1980, and much later Allison in 1998, a 20-year span. That wasn't by accident. They wanted to give each child the full attention they deserved. Rye became a doctor focused on infectious diseases. He once said, "I went into medicine because I couldn't help my dad medically, but maybe I can help someone else." Emily became a nurse and now works in an ER in Ontario. Each of their children found a path in healing, maybe because they'd watched their father fight so hard to stay alive. Heather made her own kind of sacrifice. She had been a rising star. Louise in The Sound of Music, Jessica Six in Logan's Run. She was busy, well-known, and booked. But when they adopted, she stepped back. Hollywood didn't expect women to walk away like that. But she did. After 1979, she only appeared in a few roles. A couple episodes in Vega, a guest spot on T.J. Hooker, a film called Endangered Species, and then mostly nothing. She gave it up to give her children a stable home. Robert, too, broke the mold. He wasn't the kind of father who let nannies raise his kids while he stayed on set. Even though he was one of the busiest actors on TV with 15 shows over a 30-year career, he made sure to be there on Spencer or higher. He had a clause in his contract that let him fly cross-country whenever Emily had medical appointments. That was rare, almost unheard of in the 1980s. His parenting wasn't just about showing up. It was about connecting. When Ryan misbehaved, Robert didn't yell. He sat down on the floor with him, eye to eye, and asked what was going on. He wanted to understand, not punish. And even in his last days, when the cancer had drained nearly all his strength, Robert still got on the floor to play with his youngest, Allison, just 2 days before he died. But everything changed in August 1996. Robert went in for a regular checkup, but the doctors found something. It was synovial sarcoma, a rare and aggressive cancer that affects soft tissue around the joints. It's most common in people under 30. Robert was 49. The cancer was in his groin. The treatment would be brutal, chemo, radiation, and multiple surgeries. And the timing couldn't have been worse. He had just launched a new series, The Lazarus Man, and was in the best shape of his life. The diagnosis hit Hollywood hard. The show was doing well, and a second season was already in the works. But within weeks of the news, Castle Rock Entertainment pulled the plug. The decision blindsided everyone. Only 20 of the 22 episodes had aired. 2 finished episodes were left on the shelf. TNT had already agreed to renew the show, which made the cancellation even more shocking. In July 1996, doctors started him on chemotherapy and radiation that dragged on for 6 brutal months. He showed up to the hospital every morning at 5:45 a.m. where they pumped his chest full of potassium, bicarbonate, and anti-nausea drugs before the real punishment began. Chemotherapy lasted 4 hours a day for 9-day cycles. After the 6th day, Robert said it felt like pool chemicals were burning through his veins. He tried to distract himself, but there was no escaping the nausea and pain. The radiation was even more intense. They used lead templates to aim tens of millions of rads, thousands of times stronger than a normal X-ray, at the cancer in his groin, trying not to destroy everything else. By February 1997, he had lost all his hair. He could barely breathe, and the sickness never left him. He wasn't just fighting cancer. He was fighting to survive the cure. Then something miraculous happened. In October 1997, surgeons went in to remove whatever was left of the tumor. But when they opened him up, there was nothing. No tumor, no cancer, not even dead tissue. It was as if the disease had never been there. Robert was stunned. He said, "I started to wonder if I ever had it." Doctors gave him a 5% chance of relapse. For the first time in years, there was real hope. By 1998, Robert was declared cancer-free. He became the national spokesperson for the American Cancer Society. He told the world, "It's part of my deal I made with God to spread the word that it is survivable." He started working again. He joined the cast of Love Boat, The Next Wave. And 2 years later, he fulfilled a dream, performing on Broadway as Billy Flynn in Chicago. It felt like the nightmare was finally over. Robert and his wife Heather believed they had beaten the odds. With a 95% cure rate promised by doctors, they started planning their future. He donated all $125,000 of his winnings from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire to cancer research. He and Heather launched a Euro Fund to support sarcoma studies at the University of Michigan. He traveled the country telling people to get screened early. He even began writing his memoir, An Extraordinary Life. For once, it seemed like the story might end in triumph. But it didn't. In November 2001, the cancer returned. New lumps appeared. At first, doctors thought a new drug could handle it. But they were wrong. This time, the disease was faster, stronger, and far more aggressive. The original tumor had been local. This one had spread everywhere. There was no surgery, no cure, no more chances. Robert was just finishing work on his final show, the NBC sitcom Emerald. His acting career ended as the disease began its final assault. He and Heather had believed they were in the clear. They had rebuilt their lives, and now it was all unraveling again. Only this time, they knew how the story would end. On April 16, 2002, at 7:22 p.m., Robert Urich took his last breath at Los Robles Regional Medical Center in California. He was 55. Heather and their 3 adopted children, Ryan, 24, Emily, 22, and Allison, just 4, were by his side. He had only been hospitalized a few days earlier with breathing problems. Even in his final weeks, he had been working on his memoirs, still trying to leave something behind. The night before he died, his final television movie, Night of the Wolf, had aired on national TV. Heather was 52 when she became a widow. They had been married for 27 years. She had stood by him through every surgery, every round of chemo, every moment of fear. They had lost children to miscarriage. They had built a family through adoption. And now she had to face the world alone. Her grief was enormous, but so was her strength. 3 days later, nearly 1,000 people came to St. Charles Borromeo Church in North Hollywood to say goodbye. Stars like Tony Danza, Gavin Loud, and Tom Selleck came to pay tribute. Selleck told reporters, "It's sad because of who Bob is and was. It's true friendship that brings these kind of people out." A black and white photo of Robert stood outside, surrounded by flowers. The man who had once held the world record for starring in 15 television series was gone, but no one was forgetting him. Heather didn't stop. Even before Robert's death, they had started a fund together. But now she turned it into something bigger. She founded the Robert Urich Foundation. She wanted a more hands-on approach. More events, more awareness, more money for research. Spearheading the foundation gives me energy. She said, "It's much like every priceless day I spent with Robert." She raised their children. She kept working. She turned her pain into purpose. In November 2017, Heather Menzies Urich, who had once danced across screens as Louisa Von Trapp in The Sound of Music, was told she had glioblastoma multiforme, one of the most aggressive and deadly brain cancers known to medicine. She was 68. And the cruelest part, this happened exactly 15 years after cancer had taken her husband, actor Robert Urich. In 2002, for the last decade and a half, Heather had dedicated herself to fighting cancer. She worked through the Robert Urich Foundation, raising money, helping patients, doing everything she could to keep other families from suffering the way hers had. But now it was her turn. The disease she'd been fighting had come for her. The diagnosis came just 4 weeks before her death. There was no time to prepare, no time for long goodbyes. Robert had battled cancer for 6 years. His fight gave them hope. It gave them time. Heather's decline was the opposite. Glioblastoma doesn't wait. It spreads fast and it takes faster. Her son, Ryan Urich, told reporters that her health collapsed almost immediately after the diagnosis. There was no window for treatment, no last-minute clinical trials, no chance to organize the kind of support she'd spent her life giving to others. To those who knew her, this was especially hard to watch. Heather wasn't just an actress. She was a ballerina, a mother, a woman who threw herself into every moment of life. But in just a matter of days, her voice softened, her energy faded, and she slipped away. Friends in Hollywood, some of whom had known her for decades, barely had a chance to say goodbye. She died on Christmas Eve, December 24th, 2017 at exactly 7:22 p.m. She was at the family home in Frankfort, Ontario, surrounded by her 3 children. Ryan later said she was not in pain. After nearly 4 weeks of fighting the inevitable, she had simply had enough. The setting felt both peaceful and symbolic. Christmas Eve is a time for family, for warmth, for holding on to hope. But in their case, it became the moment they lost her forever. It was a haunting echo of Robert's passing. He had died on April 16, 2002. Heather passed away exactly 15 years and 8 months later. The symmetry in their losses didn't go unnoticed, and there was more pain waiting. Just over a year earlier, in September 2016, the Sound of Music family had lost another member, Charmian Carr, who played Liesl. Now another Von Trapp sister was gone. Fans of film were heartbroken. The little girl who had once sung So Long Farewell had taken her final bow. Ryan's statement was raw and deeply personal. He didn't just announce her passing. He shared exactly what happened right down to the time. He said his mother was not in any pain. But after living life with so much energy and passion, she knew when it was time to let go. She made that choice. She took her last breath, not in fear or struggle, but with dignity. Ryan also made sure people remembered who she truly was. Not just Louisa Von Trapp. She had been a dancer, an actress, a fighter, someone who chose to spend her years helping others. And even in the end, she never lost that grace.